Sergej, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Stefan. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bitrefill. I love what the company is doing, and yeah, I'm just keen to chat and hear a little bit from you. Obviously, there's been a lot going on. Bitrefill, I've seen you recently did a rebranding, so you got a whole new logo and everything, and also you did the El Salvador thing recently as well. So I'm sure there's interesting stuff. So from your point of view, what's on your mind and what's going on at Bitrefill?
Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. We've reached, I think, a very interesting point where we're. I mean, we are the number one thing that people buy with Bitcoin, like even including all of like the merchant processor companies. Like we outdo most of them by quite a bit. But it also brings the realization and many important realizations for us in terms of that it's time for us to kick in a new gear with what we're doing because it's not enough for us to think about like our direct competitors, like the ones that people would think would be a competitor, but really about that we need to grow the pie. We need to grow the group of people that live on Bitcoin, that live on crypto, and that make transactions on a regular basis. And that's I mean, that has always been the main challenge. But now we've gotten to a certain point where we're stable and steady company with revenues, meaningfully big team. I think capability to do stuff, but it's also time for us to tell the story and to make it an engaging thing, and because a big chunk of our users aren't people that are steered by necessity. It's not that there is no other way than Bitrefill. It's people that have plenty of different choices, right, and many alternatives that are just regular exchanges or this and that, um, so we've been spending a lot of time over the past year going through brand and PR and similar topics, and some of these things have already resulted in things that we've rolled out. There's quite a bit more in the pipeline in the coming weeks in that regard. But in general, I think that and by we I mean both Bitrefill, but also like the whole circular economy community need to be better at telling the story and why, and having people to care. Because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that all of the things that we're building with Bitcoin and what people are building in other crypto, it all kind of falls apart if everything is always reliant on banks in the end, and centralized exchanges and banking relationships and those things. So I think it's super important for all of our visions, and there's many different ones, but I think it's important for all of them that Bitcoin is used as money with everything that entails, big and small and every day and so on. And we want to get to a world where people open their Bitcoin wallet as often as they open the regular wallet. Right, and we're not quite there yet. We're there with a certain audience, which is a small subset of Bitcoin users, and we're actively working on broadening that and to make it into a thing.
Right. It's one thing to simply hodl, but it's another to actually spend and use it, even if you are potentially, you might be in a situation where your income is in Bitcoin, and then you obviously have to spend out in Bitcoin. And so this is obviously for a lot of Bitcoiners, they can use Bitrefill and the cards to be able to spend. So it does bring, and obviously there have been a lot of discussions over the years about hodling and spending, and you shouldn't spend because you're not a true hodler and so on. But I think it is about also that group of people who have to spend, because they earn in Bitcoin, or
Sure.
people who it could also be a bunch of people who maybe they took a punt, right? They kind of were punting on crypto years ago, and now they're just trying to. They're like, oh, hey, I can actually spend at these sites, so here we go. I'll just use some on Bitrefill. So that's probably also a factor. But I think you're also seeing, to your point, the story of more and more people living on Bitcoin. I think that's a story you have been telling as well as a company, right?
Yeah, for sure. There are people that do, and again, like for some, it's a necessity, as you mentioned, but for a lot of them, it's a choice. Yeah, and it becomes. This is why we started paying a lot more attention to our branding and graphical profile and things like that. For the bulk of it, of people, it's a choice, it's a statement, it's something that same as, okay, you have the wonderful BTC Pay Server T-shirt, and it's a choice, and it's because that I think it's a great example because it's one of my favorite projects in the space. Shout out to all of those who are involved, but getting to the point where your brand is something that people want to wear on a T-shirt, in a podcast, right? Most brands aren't that, even big famous companies, but like nobody would want to wear a Facebook T-shirt today, right? Or a Uber T-shirt, or hell, a Wells Fargo T-shirt. It's unthinkable. It gets funny, but certain companies reach to the to the point where it becomes a lifestyle brand, a statement that I am the kind of guy who lives on Bitcoin and uses my wallet and the things like Bitrefill and other things, um, and then it needs to look cool. Like we have a lot of things that Bitcoin has a very strong brand, but it's mostly articulated in sort of printed T-shirts with orange stuff on it, maybe the occasional hat. It's not really stuff that it's stuff that will make you maybe a little bit cool in the Bitcoin conference. Yeah, but it's not really nightclub level cool, and that's where we've set the bar. And that's kind of also how the whole BitSnakes thing happened. Because like there's things that we find cool in our little bubble, hey, running a node on your Raspberry Pi. Like I think is cool. You probably also, but it's not nightclub. You can't bring your Raspberry Pi to the nightclub, right? And you shouldn't. And so I think it is important, especially now that I think we are getting to the point where the Bitcoin group is a meaningful subset of the population. And it's time to start thinking about. I hate the word adoption, but like mainstream societal behavioral change. And that's a big thing, right? How do you do that? And that's a big fucking challenge.
Yeah, I think for some time in the Bitcoin world, there's also been, obviously, there's all kinds of different things going on. In some parts of the Bitcoin world, there's been almost like and maybe this is like a crypto thing. There's like a bit of a flexing culture of like, oh, Lambos and whatever. And then on the other side, you've got like people who are more like, no, like you should be saving and you should be like reducing your extravagant expenditure and things like this. And sort of anti-flexing culture, if you will. But that said, the Bitcoin branding doesn't necessarily have to be about flexing per se. It's just a
I
T-shirt,
don't think
right?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lambo. It's something else. It's an external thing. It's a rich people's thing. It's not okay. It became a little bit a crypto thing for a while, and it's a little bit funny and this and that. But there's quite a bit more. And yeah, yeah, I guess. Maybe there will be at one point Bitrefill sports car, but we're quite ways off of that. We barely made a sneaker with LED display, So
Yeah. So
let's
so
not
just
get too
for
excited.
people who don't know, what is the sneaker and what's on it?
Yeah, well, so we built a Bitcoin sneaker. It's a modified sneaker that has like a LED grid display. It has a little a microprocessor or a little computer in it in the heel with a little battery and a 3G chip, so that it gets things like the Bitcoin price or the current block height, stuff like that. That it's like we built like a very special like low data protocol for we nerded down un, unreasonably far in building it. Um, but nerding down is also a bit of what makes it cool, because there's a lot of craftsmanship. It's up at bitsnakes.com. We've launched it with in partnership with Spencer Dinwiddie, Dallas Mavericks NBA player. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's like it's handmade, so it's not going to be for mass production or anything. We're going to randomly what do you call it, sweepstake out one of the shoes, and yeah, and maybe sell one to the highest bidder or something like that. We'll see. I mean, it's a proof of concept, right? But it's a celebration of all of the things that Bitcoiners build that are unreasonable by design, you know. But and with a nice nod to like the block clock and things like that did go out into the mainstream as well, with the Moscow time and all of that. Um,
And I think you're right to point that out, because I think even people like Jack Dorsey with Cash App have been very attuned to this idea of social and cultural cachet, right? So even there are rappers who sing about Cash App, right? So it's like this kind
yeah,
of idea. So I think maybe it's a similar kind of idea here with like Bitrefill and telling the story of living on Bitcoin and being able to earn and spend Bitcoin.
yes, that's what we're trying to do, and yeah, it, yeah, it's a bit of a shift in attitude for us as well. From the humble beginnings of, hey, we put something together that barely works, but it does work, and get the people that desperately needed to use it and so on, into making a really slick product. I mean, first and foremost, but also the fact that, I guess this is also like a big topic, but like that we're exciting technology by definition. What makes it exciting is it doesn't really work yet. Yeah, right. That is where the excitement comes from, because you triggers imagination. What if it worked? Then it would be really cool, right? Whereas we're normally in the opposite business, where we want something that people can rely on. That, hey, the Bitrefill is always going to work. My Lightning payment is always going to work. And so we're in the business of making it unexciting, making it boring as fuck. Also by definition, right? But that doesn't get you into mainstream media if it just works, right? It's not newsworthy that the thing that always works continues to work today also. Right. So part of it is also like to see what we can do to generate some excitement around uh, around the values and the thing that we are trying to build, and the broad societal change that we're trying to be a force of.
Yeah. And so in terms of the new stuff coming out, so as I understand, you've got a new feature coming out that's going to hopefully help some more people live on Bitcoin. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and what should we be anticipating there?
Yeah, so we're rolling out bill payments in the USA. This is something that we've had in El Salvador for 6 months now. That has been very popular, growing at 100 to 100% every month. Um, in practice, what this means is that if you are a US Bitcoiner, you'll be able to pay, your mortgage payments, your credit cards, your social security, your student debt, your municipal taxes, utilities. Like there's like 20,000 things that you're going to be able to pay with Bitcoin, with Lightning, with all of the I think best-in-class payment experience that we have in on Bitrefill, in a warm and familiar way to the users that we have. So that feature is going out today. There is currently a wait list, mainly because there are certain things that are new for us. Unfortunately, this product requires account verification. It's done in partnership with a financial institution, and everything like that. So we have to do that thing, and it's new, and we're sort of making sure that we are able to scale it, and we're going to be letting in people as fast as we can, basically, but constrained a little bit by the outside world. It's gotten really positive feedback from the early testers. It's something that I don't even know why nobody's really built this yet for the US. But so it's going to be something that is a first for us, or we will be the first to offer this to Americans, as far as I know. Um, and to me, it's pretty cool that we are executing on the plan for El Salvador, which was always that we use El Salvador as a beachhead. We do things there first, try it out, figure it out, learn the ins and outs of the product, but also of all of the marketing related stuff, right? And I always keep talking about that. We're a tech heavy community, but the big challenges that we have are fundamentally not technical. There are technical challenges. I enjoy it. I'm a techie myself. I know that Stephan Livera is a tech-centered podcast. This is why I listen to it as well. But there are really important challenges that are, again, the broad societal change, and those are in many ways marketing related, and you know, yeah, it's not always about the exciting new Lightning feature. It's about getting the features that we already have and trust and out into the hands of as many people as possible, and to get them to want to use it.
Yeah, and I think that's very much a social, cultural question as opposed to the technical aspects, which obviously we talk about it here a lot on my show. I mean, to be fair, we even do talk about the economic aspects also. But
Sure.
I think to this idea of using Bitrefill for bill payments, I think that's cool. Certainly, those people out there who are earning Bitcoin now, they can live on Bitcoin more easily, because up until now, there's often been a point where people, maybe they could do most of the payments in Bitcoin or using Bitrefill with the vouchers, but without being able to do bill payments, this is kind of like another sticking point for people. And so this is kind of helping
Yeah.
them close out that loop a little bit even more, because more than they could previously. So I think that part of it's definitely useful. Obviously, I'm sure some listeners are thinking, oh, hang on, Sergey, what about capital gains? Does that mean users would have to be calculating capital gains? Do you have any thoughts around that, around whether that
Yeah.
might be more of a barrier in the US as opposed to El Salvador?
Sure, but I mean, the capital gains is orthogonal. Like, no matter, it's first of all, it's different from country to country, right? And I guess we're talking about the U.S. Um, Whenever you sell Bitcoin, you have to do capital gains, even if you exchange this for goods and services, and we're no exception in that regard. And so we're no different in that sense from using using an exchange or anything. It's still in practice, everyone's obligation and responsibility to file their taxes on their own, and so we don't. Let's say capital gains is not a benefit of the bill payment offering. The benefit is convenience. A big benefit, I think, is that we still have a world where people get in trouble for, hey, you have a transaction here from a Bitcoin exchange. What is that? Let's close your account and hassle you for a week. Stuff like that. Now people can live a little bit more bankless with their coins.
Right, certainly. And I think this might reduce the amount of, let's say, selling on whether it's a platform, an exchange, or even peer to peer, because if they can just directly pay Bitcoin to pay their bill,
I
then,
mean, it's
or
still
through the
selling,
service.
right? I mean, at the end of the day, your utility company is going to get paid in regular dollars, right? So the same amount of coins will be sold in either case. It's about convenience. It's about being able to keep your funds in your wallet a little bit more, um, um, not getting hassled by incumbent industries, things like that.
For sure, yeah. And I also see it like we maybe in those countries, because Bitrefill is around all these different countries around the world. I wonder if maybe you would be more inclined to see like growth in the countries that don't have a capital gains tax, or as much of a capital gains tax implication. Let's say the El Salvadors of the world, maybe the Singapores, or maybe Germany if you've held for more than a year, or Portugal, things like that. I'm curious if you see that kind of thing as well. Not
It's
really.
very hard to tell, to be honest. And I mean, I think that um, again, like for whatever country, there's no fundamental difference between us and some other service, right? And it's still the case that most exchanges aren't going to report you to the tax authorities just because you sold some coins. And so, if you want to not report your capital gains, you are able to do so, but then the system has ways of finding that out and so on, and it's illegal, and you shouldn't do that. I mean, you have to keep in mind that everyone's an individual and they have their own context, right? And whatever the capital gains thing is, um, um, that is the factor that decides for them, and that's always equal, right?
Sure.
So. Um,
Yeah.
uh, of course, it becomes easier for people to take their salary in Bitcoin, for example, in locations where there are capital gains laws. But there's also so many ways around that stuff now with things like stable coins or stable value accounts, your strikes and cash apps and Shiva wallets and things like that. So yeah, I think that it's mostly a solved enough, I would say, problem. It's going to get even better. Um,
Yeah.
it's more of
Gotcha.
a again, convenience, lifestyle, and so on, and money in the bank is an expression, um, and that's kind of the stuff that we're struggling against.
Yeah, sure. So I think, like you said, it's the technical part of it, and maybe the logistical aspect of it is one side, and then I think the social and maybe the convenience factor, to your point, is probably more important in that social and cultural uh, change and shift that we're seeing as the world goes to Bitcoin. Also, I'm sure some listeners will be curious to get your thoughts on like payment breakdowns between, let's say, how many people are doing Lightning stuff, how many people are doing on-chain stuff, and other stuff. If you have any comments to share for listeners there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that Lightning payments are still a niche even among Bitcoin payments. I think that out of Bitcoin payments, but we are at maybe 15% of Bitcoin payments are happening with Lightning, right? So and it is growing at a steady pace. I'm always frustrated because I always wanted to go faster. I always say that if you're tracking something that has an exponential growth curve and you're somewhere not at the top, not at the bottom, then you can make a very eloquent case for why it's insanely great, and you can also make an eloquent case for why it's miserably low. Right, they're both true because you're at an exponential growth trajectory and you're not on the moon yet, and Lightning is in something like that. I think that Lightning does have a marketing problem, in the sense that it is primarily marketed to people that are enthusiasts and care and love Bitcoin, as opposed to people that use Bitcoin. And these groups overlap a little bit, obviously, but they overlap less than many people think, right? And I always bring up the BitTorrent analogy that I will use BitTorrent to download a Linux distribution, let's say. But I don't hang out in the BitTorrent community. I don't have a BitTorrent emoji in my handle, or I don't wear their T-shirts. I don't have a strong opinion on which implementation of the BitTorrent protocol is the best. I use it as a tool. I don't love it. And most people that use Bitcoin use it as a tool as well. And I think this is important to understand. And I think that, I mean, that's a big realization for us, is that, we're not in conflict with the people that say you should hold stack sats and so on. You should do all of these things. These are great things. We're not in any conflict. If you don't want to use your Bitcoin to buy stuff, that's great. Don't, we target the people that do want to use Bitcoin, and to provide them a valuable offering. And I think that that's been like a big it took a while to sort of because like when you are like us, like so deep in the community, hanging out on the Twitter, on the conferences, and so on, you're always sort of surrounded by this community of people, and some of them are users, but many of them aren't, and there's this tension in that, and I think that it's important for us to sort of be mindful of who does use Bitcoin to make purchases,
Yeah.
and what kind of other things do they use, and paint a user persona and a profile, and so on. And like the simple control question that we can ask, and maybe the audience can ask themselves, is like, when did you last open your wallet and make a transaction? Um, right? And if the answer is I did it 2 months ago to buy a ticket to the Bitcoin conference, well, then you're not a heavy transactional Bitcoin user, right? You're a hodler, and hodling is using as well, and that's great. And you know, but there are people that do make transactions on a regular basis, that pop up their wallet and so on. And I mean, like, frankly, a lot of these people also use other crypto, and this is, I think, the essence of Lightning's marketing problem, is that because Lightning is so sort of, for historical reasons, with the block size war and all of these things, and altcoins and all of that, which I agree with on a values level, um, but it's also the case that uh, people that deal with the tokens, that do those sort of things, are also likely to be living in crypto, and because of the way that we're presenting Lightning, there is no good option for them, right? Because Lightning is not in any of the wallets that they use. And why, and it doesn't have any speculative functionality, so it's not, there's no token, so there's no incentive for the casinos, to the token casinos, to integrate it, and so it sort of ends up building its own little circular economy, which is sort of free from all of these things, which is great from a value standpoint, of course, because there is still no Ponzi schemes on Lightning and stuff like that. Um, so it's great that is happening, but then it becomes a separate island, right? That doesn't interact with the broader crypto world, and that's I think a question that one can land at different decisions, but it's important to be aware of it, and decide, not just ignore. Simple things like we talked about stable coins. people who get paid in crypto will often want to get paid in stable coins, right? Because you don't want your monthly paycheck to go up and down in value on a day-to-day basis. And okay, now there are some projects to build stable coins on Lightning. I think it's incredibly encouraging. But like in the status quo, you're going to use a wallet that enables you to use stable coins. And today that wallet doesn't have Lightning, and so then you need to have a separate wallet for your Lightning, and then it's living into different worlds. Um, Again, it's a tough question, right? Because this whole industry, including the diehard Bitcoin part, is part of like a galaxy that spins around a black hole, right? And that black hole called the casino, like in the abstract sense, that the speculative aspect is at the essence of a lot of things, even buy and hodl, right? I mean, you hodl because your bitcoins are going to be worth more in the future, which is a speculative investment and so on. Yeah, so it's just a different flavor, different strategy of it all, and this does permeate our space, and so it's important to be mindful of um, what to do with it. If you want to build your own galaxy that is entirely outside of that, or do you want to find ways to interact with the force that is happening and try to aikido it into a more
Yeah.
constructive direction.
So I think you make a good point, and in fairness to you, you have been making this point for probably multiple years now. This idea that Bitcoin Twitter is not necessarily Bitcoin, right? So that they are different groups of people, and the kinds
Yeah.
who are spending.
Also
Yeah,
goes for shitcoin Twitter, by the way.
yeah,
That's it also applies equally to those things for the same reasons. Again, like the
right. That
people
the
that
users are not necessarily
not
the
the
same as
passionate.
the vocal online posters, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I do actually use Bitrefill. So I'm actually in the user camp myself, but I can appreciate where there are a lot of people who are not. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's maybe is it a question of values? Is it a question of, I guess, hypocrisy? Is it? I don't know. Or is it just
No,
kind of
I don't
they're just
think so,
valuing different
and
things?
I don't think so. And again, like I'm against trying to guilt people into doing something. It's not sustainable, and it sucks. Everybody should do what they want, and if you want to hodl your bitcoins, that's great. You should do that. Um, uh, you know. Again, like you can be a friend of Bitrefill without being a customer. That's fine, right? And we have a lot. Like we observe that many times. Like from our Twitter presence, like I can post like, "Hey, I need an intro for a translator into Aramaic," and within 5 minutes I have 5 leads. Yeah, right. Because we have a fan base of people that care about us, about lighting, and so on. It's not always as easy if we say, "Hey, here we have a product you can buy in Armenia." There's a different environment because again, the people that use the stuff are sometimes different from the people that see it as belonging in a community. But
Yeah,
I mean, they do overlap. So I'm exaggerating a little bit, but
yeah, yeah.
I
Of
think it's
course.
important to know because like when you do marketing, you're focusing on, or the way we do it is like focusing on behavior, right? What kind of things does the customer persona do? Like their demographics are less relevant to if they are a boy or a girl or tall or short or whatever. Yeah, it's the behavior, and so we're looking for people that open their wallet every day. Yeah,
Yeah,
and we're looking to grow that audience, and we're not going to get there by guilting people or by
of
taking
course. Yeah,
conflict against the hodl gang. I don't like the Spadden thing. It's like, come on, like it's reactionary. Like we need to create our own let's say a movement, I guess, or like behavior type, and it needs to stand on its own and not be in a reaction to something else, which we don't even disagree with.
Of
Yeah,
course. And I think the other aspect of it is that Lightning is still early days, right? Like it has only been mainnet for what, 4 years. That's still like relatively young, and we are now starting to see some other services that are plugging in and turning it on. So obviously, Bitfinex has been around for ages. I mean, Kraken have recently turned it on. Cash App are turning it on. Robinhood have promised that they'll turn it on. Paxful, Chivo, obviously. I mean, once you add all of these up, that's probably what, over 50 million potential users who could use Lightning
yeah.
just to,
Yeah, but then you still need to, again. It's There's a lot of there's chicken and egg type problems, right? And it's great that we have some chickens. Now we just need to figure out how to market the egg to them, so to speak. But there's a self reinforcing dynamic with these things, and it does require marketing and storytelling and all of these things to get people to be interested and care, and show them what possibilities the new things have and what it can add to their life.
Yeah, yeah. Um, are you seeing things like in terms of like as far as like adoption, or at least in terms of Bitrefill users? Are you seeing that? Is that coming? Is that waxing and waning along with bull and bear cycles in Bitcoin, or is it kind of independent of that? You're just seeing like independent like growth, let's say, of people adopting and using Bitrefill platform.
It's both. I mean, obviously, when there is a bull cycle and the Bitcoiners are rich, the more people are considering buying something with their coins. Of course, but we also see a slow and steady growth over time, and so you see higher highs, higher lows. But yeah, it does fluctuate a little bit. Um, I mean, we've been through a period now for half a year where it's been relative price stability, and I mean, I'm a fan of price stability, or uh, slow and steady growth, instead of these crazy hype cycles that steer focus to the wrong things and create a bunch of other issues and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it is both. I think, and we see more of everything. Like, of course, when the price is high, we get better conversion rate and higher average order sizes and everything. Yeah, I mean, that's not, I think, hard to understand. I mean, same as on an exchange, when price goes up, there's going to be higher order volume because more people are looking to sell. This is why the mempool clogs up when the price goes up, is because a lot of people are moving coins to an exchange or between one exchange and another. Yeah, but a lot of it is people that are like, okay, maybe this is where I get off, and they're sending their coins to an exchange. And um, every time that somebody buys a Bitcoin, someone else sells a Bitcoin. The amount of Bitcoins bought and sold are always the same, and all Bitcoins are hodled by somebody at all times. That is in the design, I guess, except for what's in the mempool and whatever. But let's not go into that. But as a general rule, all Bitcoins are being hodled, right? And selling your Bitcoin is transferring the hodling rights to somebody else in exchange for other values, such as usually
Right.
fiat.
Yeah, of course, of course. Um, yeah, so I think it is an interesting point there around, let's say, as you were saying, kind of the inconvenient truths about Bitcoin payments that, right, it doesn't always align up exactly with who's vocal on Twitter or whatever other online platform or forum. But it can also just be people who are using it and they're not really as plugged into that online scene. Maybe they even know about it, but they're just not that interested in kind of following the Bitcoin Twitter scene. They just use it because, hey, my wallet has this thing.
Yeah, and I mean, like now we have on the site we have a wallet selector on the payment experience, which is like a optional feature. But if you use it, we adjust the experience to make sure that we reduce the risk of something, making something wrong. Like we use the Bec32 addresses for wallets that support it, and we use regular old style addresses for wallets that don't, stuff like that, right? And so we get usage data from which wallets that people use, and it's always it's very interesting because like when I talk to our customers, they usually can guess very easily because they're statistically they're likely to be one of the bigger categories. Whereas if you ask people from like on a conference and so on, they usually have a hard time guessing, what the top wallets are, and often they don't even know which they are because they are shitcoin wallets that don't always subscribe to the core, to all of the values, or maybe they're not open source or something. There's some centralized element to it, or this and that.
I
But
see. Yeah.
it is sort of telling, I think, that even when it comes to Bitcoin, many a big chunk of those are transactions are being done uh, by people that also deal with shitcoins. And I mean, and it's not even that's. I mean, even at a conference, if you ask people, sort of okay, outside of the maybe ultra diehard group, there's quite a lot that are going to be. There's always, even like at the Bitcoin conference, that is like very clear, no crypto, no NFTs, no nothing. But there's still people, but we're doing this thing. So I mean, if you look at the broader perspective, there is a sort of interplay with these things. And I think there was a time and a place to distance ourselves from that, as a community, let's say. In many ways, I think that ship has sailed. Many of the investors in the Bitcoin space are also investing in the shitcoin space, and so on. And even in the companies, if you look at who ended up investing in companies that are very Bitcoin only, staying true to the cause, but if you look at where the capital is coming from, a little bit this and that. And it is what it is, sort of. I'm not myself a big fan of all of these things. Um, at the same time, yeah, I don't know. Let's not go deep
Y-
into the
Yeah,
altcoin.
sure,
I don't
sure.
think I
Yeah.
can add anything to that discussion that hasn't already been said so many times.
Yeah, sure. I think it's yeah, like to what you're saying, it's like you might think like that certain based on certain online discussion that these wallets are the popular ones, but actually what's happened is more like because some other wallets have been around for a long time, they are actually the ones where a lot of the volume is coming from. So probably probably the common example is like what used to be blockchain.info, I think it's now blockchain.com. That's an example where they actually, because, and some of that could just be a Lindy factor, right? Like just because of so much time in the space and so many people would just go there for their first wallet. I think, even back in the day in like 2013 or whatever, I had a wallet with them and stuff like this, right?
Yeah,
Whereas nowadays, obviously, I'm using more like Lightning wallets, Phoenix, Zeus, things like this. Um, you know, so yeah, I think that some of that can play out in that way also.
absolutely. I mean, hey, most people, I mean, same way as you would install a BitTorrent client, you type it into Google or into the App Store or Play Store, and that's what people do. And so, I mean, a very simple exercise is type in Bitcoin wallet into the App Store that you have on your device, and you can see what the top things that people recommend is, and you get an idea. Yeah, of what someone sees when they show up in the space. And if you take into account that they don't care about politics of our community and stuff that happened 5 years ago, that some company did a thing that many people thought was bad. Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So on the just out of curiosity on the Bitcoin side of things, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on the whole BIP21 thing. So, for example, Cash App, they recently came out with their announcement, and I think as part of that, they were trying to go to this idea of one QR code to kind of carry both a Lightning invoice and a Bitcoin fallback address, so so that was part of their idea of how to make the standard so that people can just scan one QR. I'm curious. Obviously, you as a company would have done a lot of work on how to structure that because, again, you have to support across all these different wallets and different customers who are some of them that are already advanced level and others at a very beginner level.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to end up, right? I mean, I think the end goal is that Lightning shouldn't be a consumer brand. It's just a way of how you transfer bitcoins, and that it's going to be the default way with fallbacks, which then uses BIP21. I mean, the only reason why we didn't do that on Bitrefill, well, there's a couple of reasons. The main reason is that I guess we're getting into technical stuff, but it adds a lot of data to the QR code,
Gotcha.
and it makes it difficult to scan that code on lower end devices.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of users in emerging countries that don't always have the fancy new iPhone.
Yeah.
And so we need to take that a little bit into consideration. I still think that is where it's going to end up, and for us as well. There's also the issue of that like generating a bunch of addresses is costly, because we need to monitor them and so on. And it's also something that people don't realize until they try to do it with millions of them.
Good point.
Monitoring for a lot of addresses, including things that can go wrong, and some user sends to an address that they used once 6 months ago, and they need to get their money back, and it adds complexity. And so we chose back then to have Lightning as a separate payment option. But yeah, I mean, it does get tricky, and we see this in El Salvador, right, where people don't understand what is Lightning. I pay with Bitcoin, right? But what they mean is that they will pay with Bitcoin over Lightning, because all of the wallets there are Lightning enabled wallets. Um, so we've had to do a little bit of custom adjustments there in different periods and so on. And so, but yeah, I think that general line of thinking is good. I think that backwards compatibility is super important. Um, I mean, for us, like we built the wallet selector specifically so that we can do the cool new stuff for those that support the new stuff when there is not backwards compatibility. But that also, creates a cost, right? It requires a lot of software to build and to maintain and so on. And so someone just setting up, hey, pay me with Bitcoin on their website wouldn't be able to do that in the same way, and it's tricky. At the same time, I think our industry has shown to be notoriously slow with upgrades of technology. Um, so yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah,
It's a
but
tricky
I appreciate that
subject.
it's like you're actually dealing with the real world consequences of it, right? Because it's easy to be kind of on Twitter and be on the latest thing and always using this, but I understand that to the point we were saying as well. This is not just a technical phenomenon; it's also a social one, and we have to think about uh, what is it going to take for more and more people to come in from that social, cultural consequence or cultural reasons. So I'm curious as well if you have any thoughts, just broadly, as you look at people coming into Bitcoin around the world. What do you see as being like those big drivers socially or culturally, if we're thinking from that point of view?
That's an excellent question, and puts me on the spot a little bit. I don't get asked that so often. Um, I mean, many of the core values. I mean, it comes down to freedom, but it presents itself in different ways. Freedom to work in a different country, right? If you're as today, many people work on their laptop to produce some kind of information that they get paid for, and so that creates the freedom of interacting financially in other places. There is obviously the speculative side is a big factor. I mean, I remember like when we were first time we were in El Salvador and we were talking to, and now this was actually the second time. We talked to all the taxi drivers. Obviously, I mean, we're very taxi driver driven, uh, pun intended. Um, um, and we talked about, hey, do you have a Bitcoin wallet? Yeah, and which one do you use, and so on. And it was like, yeah, but like I got some Bitcoins from different customers. I drove some Americans, this and that, but like my wife says I should save it. Right. So I, mean, I think like what I've found is that people, especially when it comes to the Bitcoin stuff, people are very similar, even if they come from very different cultural or economical backgrounds. There's a lot of similar dynamics, right? Obviously, there's different. The commas are on different places in their wallet, but there are similar dynamics, and people definitely more and more people are waking up to the fact that there is different kinds of inflations going on and prices are getting higher, and something like Bitcoin is independent and you can keep that and it goes up a little bit, and then it also has the concern, what if the price goes down? All of these things. So yeah, yeah, convenience, like being able to feel like you own the keys to your own money, getting away from cash has also pros and cons. I mean, we could talk about El Salvador if you want more. I mean, there. I mean, money there is literally pieces of green paper that you have in your wallet, right? And so it's a pretty big shift to go from there to that money is a number that you have in an app on your phone. And what does that mean, and how does that work? And then there is also this weird association that Bitcoin is somehow part of the government, right? Because of how it was rolled out and so on. And so there's this association, and some people uh, don't always trust the government, even if they like it. It's like, I would better to keep my dollars with myself. Um, so there's a lot of challenges with these things, and those are like the things that we're now trying to figure out, throwing stuff on the wall and seeing how we can again shift those attitudes. I mean, we add a massive convenience factor to people, right? I mean, for Americans, paying your bills does not require going outside your door. Yeah, but in El Salvador, usually it does for a lot of people, right? So it becomes an errand that you do. You would go into the commercial center, queue to the bank, submit the thing, pay them in cash, or to some other company that does the bills stuff. And so it is a big convenience that, hey, you know what, you're sitting on your couch and your data ran out, and you can just click, and then it works again. Um, but since it's not part of, they also don't have the same convenience enthusiasm that many Western countries have, where so people like they don't see it as it doesn't offend them as much as it would say an American that they would need to drive for half an hour to pay their bills in the same way, and but I think that it's going to get there, right? I mean, hey, why drive when you cannot drive? Right. But again, there's a lot of these things, and how can you get Bitcoin, and do you want to trust it? Do you want to keep it in the Chiva wallet or not? Pros and cons, right? But the ATMs work with the Chiva wallet well the best, but there's also other cons, and there's a lot of stuff. But it's exciting that it's all like kind of like boiling, and there's tensions, and like Strike are doing their things, and the Galoy and Bitcoin Beach people are doing their things, and there's a lot of stuff, and there's good amount of people that use the Moon wallet. So there is, and it is sort of over time, like the percentage of non-Chivo usage is increasing. I think for obvious reasons, right? I mean, the main feature of Chivo was that you got free money there, and now that you don't get free money anymore, well, then you can use any wallet that you want, and so there is a market of opportunity that people can choose. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I
So
mean,
I think
it's it has been growing at a good pace, very steady pace. So the charts look really nice. But again, it's still early even for El Salvador, and we'll see. Like the dark secret about exponential growth is that it's always the beginning of an S curve, right? So
Right.
we haven't yet seen where the S curve fizzles out. And when it will be time to push it more. But at some point, I guess it's going to get more challenging, and and some of these things are going to take a little bit of time. Um,
Yeah, I think it takes patience, and as you were saying, like the social part of it, I think that comes down to enough people having an awareness about inflation and understanding what Bitcoin is. Of course, that will take time for them to learn, and then the point where Bitrefill can really help is, as you were saying, it's the convenience factor, and for some people, it's the necessity factor, right? That they don't have another easy way to use it, so it's not just convenience; it's actually necessity for them. But over time, we're going to see this plethora of different Bitcoin services that people can use, and fundamentally, the that number is going to grow over time. I think part of it is also, like you were saying, it's part of it. It's just going to be a patience factor, right? Like there's a lot of impatience I see sometimes about why certain numbers are not higher or why certain things are not more advanced than they are currently. But I think it just has to be remembered how young Bitcoin is, how young Lightning is, that all these things will just take time to grow.
I guess. I mean, it's all again, it's all relative. But I mean, Bitcoin is what 12 now.
Yeah, like
Lightning is
13.
4 or
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not brand new, right? I don't know. I also feel like the whole it's still early. I don't know. Maybe it is, um, but it's not brand new. And um, but yeah, I mean, we're playing our part and trying to to grow the thing and to make it an exciting thing that can be a lifestyle statement.
Fantastic. Well, listeners, make sure you check out Bitrefill. Sergey, where can people find you guys?
Yeah, bitrefill.com is where you can find us, and Bitrefill on Twitter, and I'm at Zigamon on Twitter. So uh, reach out and tell me what you think. Um, yeah. Um,
Excellent. Well, thanks, Sergey.